discussed about one case study on the Taj Mahal one. Okay, and we also discussed the reactions pertaining to smoke, how they are formed, what this cocktail is made up of. So we went through through the reactions. Okay, through different reactions. Wait, somebody is here. Okay, okay, it's not there. Okay, and what is peroxyacetyl nitrate, what is photochemical smog, and how they are prepared, how they are produced. Okay, and then we also discussed about ozone depletion, what how it happened, and how this important finding on how this ozone had depleted was it happened in the course of history, and what are the conditions that are necessary, what are the conditions that favors the ozone depletion apart from the CFCs. And then we also discussed about the chemistry of the ozone depletion. Okay, followed by some pictures on how in these decades of time the huge loss in ozone layer had taken place. And then we also got through some of the important measuring parameters and terms like Dobson unit, ozone depleting substances, ozone depleting potential, and what are the sources for these ozone depleting substances, and so and so. And then we at the end we ended it with, okay, what are the damages caused due to ozone hole. Okay, so is there anything which you think, okay, this has not been discussed earlier? Anyone can just let me know. इसमें बेटा कुछ छूटा है or is it all covered? Anyone?
It was all covered, ma'am.
Perfect, 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 perfect. Then we come to a very important part, okay? And that is your, oh yeah, station wala. Wait, not this one. Okay. Okay, Nishabeda, I have noted your text. Fine. Okay, so now we come to a very important part. Okay, policies का नाम सुनते ही एक boring सा feeling आने लगता है, वो सब क्या है, क्या आई होंगी policies, ठीक है? And we sometimes associate it with something very historical years and the principles and the what the annexes and यही सारा कुछ हम उसमें पढ़ते हैं policies on legislation. But I'll try to tell you in the form of a story, in the form of the how each and every event were connected one after another. Okay, and we will also try to have a glimpse on how the politics have started playing a role, how the economy, the social aspects, they were taken into account one by one. क्योंकि एक रात का सिंथेसिस नहीं है कि अचानक से आपको सपने में आ गया कि अरे people are dying out of hunger and then you suddenly discover it, oh, it's because the resources are being exploited and are being used in a very unwiseful way. How they happen one after the another, they all are connected. धीरे धीरे करके एक एक एस्पेक्ट को समझ में आया और वो एक लिंक क्रिएट करता चला गया जिससे कि newer and newer forms of policies started coming up. Okay, so when we talk about sustainable development, of course, sustainable development concept, it was not initially. Okay, so how this came, what was the reason behind it? We will all discuss that how this sustainable development concept came into being and what all had happened in the past. Okay, from there itself, we will understand why sometimes this dissatisfaction, this mumbling, this restive, and this exchange of heated words happen whenever any climate change summit happens. How much fruitful are these climate summits that are happening? Or they haven't made any changes, or they are simply a political platform where people are meeting, they come, they discuss, they fight, and then they go away. Okay? So we will have a completely different understanding on all those things. Okay? So I have divided it into two parts, one across globe, and then from there we will understand how India as a responsible nation towards the climate change, towards sustainability, towards its role in ensuring the environment, took inspiration and motivation by signing these policies that had happened across and on the international scale, and it came up with the acts and different provisions one after the another. Okay, so we'll begin first with the your across globe thing. Okay, okay, wait. Okay, so just listen to it properly. Don't worry about the notes; they all are there. I'll send you. Okay, and rest in detail if you want the matter. Then book is already there. So by paralleling this presentation and the notes that I'll send, you can collect more matter. Okay, and in any case, I have added links in the slides. कहीं कहीं पे मैंने link डाला है. उस link को click करके you will get more information on that topic. Okay. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so before we go to understand what the policies had happened and how they have begun, let's first try to understand some terminologies. Okay, like what difference between a protocol? What does it mean by conference? What does it mean by conference of parties? What is convention? What does it mean by amendments? Okay, what does it mean when we say a treaty, or when we say as an agreement, when we say as an international environmental agreement, and so on. Okay, so now even before that, the very first question is, why was the the famous quote says, the necessity is the mother of inventions. Okay, so these laws and legislations, they came in place when multiple environmental crises in of resources, the pressure, and in the form of people, in the form of the refugees, in the form of the civil disturbances between people. So when these all environmental crises started happening, there was a need to some environmental laws and legislation that had a ruling on at an international or the global levels, so that they can be monitored, and each and every nation can be assigned responsibility for the same. Okay, so and of course these all the legislations, we will see that they happened after industrial revolution, after a decade, after 50 years of these industrial revolution. Now industrial revolution, they started happening at the end of the 18th century or at the beginning of 19th century, somewhere around 1870s, 1860s. Okay, so when they started happening, so when this around 50 years, this 60, 70, 80 years of time had passed, the impacts were observed. We have already discussed one in the terms of ozone, how one after the another they started discovering the ozone depletion. Okay, similarly, when the greenhouse gases or this CO2, it went into the atmosphere and reached to the level where it started showing this change in the climatic impact, then it was found, and then there was a shortage in the resources, then there was uneven distribution of the resources. Then on the other hand, this poaching, hunting, illegal trading was also happening. On one side, the forests were being cut. So all these things were happening, for which this environmental laws and legislations were being brought. Okay, so what does it mean when we say as an international environment agreement? Okay, so it has three terms: international, environmental, and agreements. Environmental, we understood. It will include all the ranges, not just pertaining to environment, but anything that is connected with the environment, that is the human beings, the well-being of the other ethnic groups, maybe tribes, maybe communities, women, children, along with the environmental aspects of nature, species, pollution, climate, food production, agricultural thing, economy, all that thing is there in this environmental thing. Okay. Now, international, when it becomes international, when two or more than two nations, they come together. It is known as bilateral treaty or bilateral agreement when only two countries are involved in signing it. And it is known as multilateral agreement when more than one country are there in signing it. What does it mean, agreement? Agreement has taken from a word known as agree. And agree means, okay, you means you have been read out some rules, regulations, and whatever there, or the principles, everything is there, and you are satisfied. Not satisfied, you agree with them. Okay, you agree that okay, this problem is there, this consent is there, and whatever the decision will be taken by the body, you agree to follow them. Okay, so when this happens, then it is said to be as your international environmental agreement. Okay. Now we come to some few more terms which are very important. The difference between conventions, conferences, conference of parties, protocols, what are they? Okay. Now, now if I say what is a convention, so convention, conference, they all are same. These words are interchangeably used, but they have the same meaning. So what happens in convention? It is simply a meeting where representative from different parts, different globe, or representative from different nations, they come together. Okay, why do they come together? To discuss some issue. Okay, why that issue needs to be addressed? Because that if that is not is not discussed, it may cause some very bad and some high prices need to be paid for that, maybe in the form of a human life or something. Why people from different countries are being called? Because that couldn't be handled by a single nation. For that issue to handle that issue, to address that issue, to make people aware of the gravity of the situation, how bad it has turned, this international platform is created where people or representative from all the nations they come. This is known as your convention or conference. Okay. When we say convention of parties or conference of parties, what does it mean? Parties are is a name to the country. Okay, all those nations, all the representative of the nation who are coming, they are the parties. Okay, so for example, India is one party, Pakistan is another party, the Nepal is another party, USA is another party, Canada is another party. So these all are, instead of calling it as a conference of nations, it's been called as conference of parties. Okay, or convention of parties. Is it clear? Is it clear, Vida?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Perfect. Okay. Now we come to the term called protocol. Okay, for example, we call Vienna as Vienna Convention, but Montreal as Montreal Protocol. Okay, why don't we call it as Montreal Convention or Vienna Protocol? Okay. So before that, we first need to understand what is this protocol. Now, protocol means, now what is happening is, let's try to understand it in a more simpler way. Okay, forget about the globe. Okay, let's think it in terms of maybe we are living in a village. Okay, now in a village, a problem came up within the form of shortage of water. Okay, or maybe there was a pond which was the only source of water for that village, and the water has gone down because of the growing water table. Okay, now the village head, the panchayat person, he will call a meeting. So representing each house will come and will sit. What that panchayat head will do, he will address the problem. There will be some data, some results, with the help of which he will support that okay, this is really a problem. Okay, people will listen and they will debate or discuss, or they will listen, and once they understand, okay, yes, this problem is really there, they will agree to it. Okay, now once agree होने का मतलब है कि this is not, the solution is still not there. The first step is that was there was calling people and addressing them the situation, and to find that whether people have agreed on that problem or not. When this happens, the next step is then happens is to look for the solutions. Okay, what are those solutions, and how each and every person has to participate in and following those steps in order to bring that change. Say for example, each and maybe the rule comes. Okay, what we will do is that we will dig that lake or dig that pond so that the depthness can be increased. So before the monsoon, it has that considerable amount of depth. So when the rainfall will happen, the water will fill the pond. Second, okay, if you find okay any sort of invasive species or water hyacinth is there, so a group will be found who will remove these water hyacinth. And third, by the time that pond will fill, maybe by for one day these group of people will take the water, another day these group of people will take the water. So all those rules and regulations that will be prepared. This is a protocol. Okay. So after effect of any convention, when it comes with an agreement where the problem or an issue is being addressed, once it comes to an agreement, the next step is to come up with an inventory of actions. Okay. Now those actions are announced in the form of protocol. Okay. Now once that protocol is ready, again the countries are being called. क्योंकि उस protocol में क्या mentioned है ये भी तो जरूरी है ना जानना. So those protocol will be read, means the actions that need to be taken, those are mentioned in the protocol. They are being read to the people or they are being circulated to the people, so that if any suggestions to make any changes or any disagreement or is there, they can make the changes likewise. Okay, so that is your protocol. Once people agree to that protocol, they are made to sign that protocol. And a protocol is not that simple, because sometimes it's obligatory to follow them, it's binding. Sometimes it's flexible, you may not bind it. Now how that is decided, we will discuss it later, how the protocol can be binding, how is it so, what are those factors by which they differentiate. Okay, for these countries it will be binding, for these countries it can be flexible, and so on. And the protocol also addresses what are the sources for that issue, what are the sources for that problem, and how in phased manner that cut down has to be brought. Okay, so this is the difference between a protocol and a convention. Okay, now what are amendments and ratification? See, now एक बार protocol बन गया, so it's not necessary that okay, it's the job is done. Third step is still pending. That is follow up. How are we going to take the follow up? So that protocol is followed by series of conventions or series of in the conferences in extension to that, so that the follow up can be taken first thing. And if during that, means when people started following up, they come across some problem in terms of shortage of the funding, or maybe in terms of some missing technology, or maybe in terms of like some economical loss, that could be addressed there. And accordingly, changes are made in the protocol. They are said to be as the amendments or ratification. Are these terms and concept clear? Is this perfect? Okay, if anyone has any doubt, then you can ask it later, no problem. Okay, so once we are clear about all these terms and the concepts, now we jump into this history. Okay, now we come to the history. So before we begin, we still have something to discuss, and that is UN. Okay, now UN is like a panchayat, village head of that panchayat. Okay, because say for example, if Africa is facing some crisis, now if Africa comes and says that okay, it's going to call that meeting for entire all the countries to come, it's not necessary that other countries will think. They will think, oh, it's your problem. We are free whether to attend it or not. But when some authority or some organizing which is being recognized by all the nations calls that meeting, then of course the impact is different. Because in that case, you are obligated to, sometimes you are socially and morally and ethically obligated to attend it. Okay? You have to go and attend it. Okay? Show your presence there. Okay? So UN was that body. Okay? Now, can anyone tell, now of course UN was established in 1945. Can anyone tell why the UN came up? Why this international body of UN came up? Anyone? What was the need for the UN?
मैम नीड इसलिए थी क्योंकि कई सारी कंट्रीज में कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स थी जो हर किसी को फेस करनी पड़ी थी, आई गेस इस वजह से.
Okay, good try, Mansi. Good try. Okay. Now, the biggest reason was World War. So, World War one by one, succession में हो गए थे. One happened in around some 1914, and then another happened in some 1941. So, now and of course, war implies huge loss to economy, loss to the life of people. Then there is so much of malice between the governments, between the nations, between the countries. So, um, so keeping in all these things in mind, so that these world wars don't happen in future, or any such war or any such disturbance, if at all they happen in the future, they could be negotiated, or they can be solved, or they can be managed. That for that purpose, UN has been created. Okay. And I think it has succeeded in not many ways, because otherwise there are not many countries which would have probably gone into a war had the UN negotiations wouldn't have happened. Okay. So now then of course, depending upon the role by the UN, it was divided into the six bodies were created, including your General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council, Trusteeship Council, International Court of Justice, UN Secretariat, so and so and so. Okay. So their aim was to promote and facilitate international cooperation and address the global concern for maintaining the international peace and security. Okay. Wait. Okay. Okay. अंशिका बेटा म्यूट योरसेल्फ ठीक है या अंशिका बेटा म्यूट योरसेल्फ ओके थैंक यू कोई बात नहीं कभी कभी हो जाता है इट्स फाइन okay I think there is some problem with the speaker maybe okay no problem she will figure that out okay um so where were we yeah okay so once this UN had established and by that time these problems started happening in terms of unwiseful use of the selfish way of using resources and the pollution and of course the ozone thing was these ozone depleting substances they were also coming in the news and in the reports so it was found uh, Anshika beta mute yourself Anshika are you there yeah thank you okay fine so this was the first milestone that had happened in the history of taking in global action on environment or addressing the issue on environment okay and this happened in 1972 the UN called all the nations for the first time environment on the global scale. Okay? So this was also known as your United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, which in short is also known as the Stockholm Conference. Stockholm is the capital of this nation known as this Sweden. It's in Europe. It's in the top notch of the Europe. It's a Scandinavian, very, very cold country. Okay, and this was a 1 week summit. It happened from not more than 1 week. It happened for about some 10, 11 days. And it happened from June 5 to 16. And that is why June 5 is celebrated as World Environment Day, because this is the first milestone when UN addressed this issue and called all the nations for addressing this thing. Okay, because UN was able to see that it's not just the environment; it is also something. Actually, importantly, I mean, very interestingly, this climate change hadn't been that in news at that time. Okay, कि उसका इतना ज़्यादा impact उस समय नहीं हुआ था, but still they addressed this issue of environment because they saw कि resources के ये unwise use से क्या हो रहा था, because at that time the technology was flourishing, it was on its peak. So those countries that were having the science and technology, they were using the resources of those nations who were not or who were not very well sound or were profound in the technology. So that uneven distribution was happening. So there were likely chances कि in future if they realize कि अच्छा उनके resources कोई और लेकर चला गया, that restless thing could have erupted, that could have created disturbances between the nations. Okay, first thing. Second thing, this was very, very unethical. ठीक है, resources किसी और के हैं, लेके कोई और जा रहा है और मुनाफा कोई और ले रहा है, ठीक है, उसमें उनका कोई शेयर नहीं है. ये unethical thing इस चीज को avoid कर this thing was getting affected. Okay, so this was all associated with the unwiseful use of resources, and because unwiseful use of resources is also connected to the environmental problem or creating disturbance to the environment, so that is how this problem was being addressed. UN had called this thing to address primarily this thing, okay, this issue, okay, that that the development, okay, it's good to go for the development, economic development, but we have to look into the amount of earth resources that are available, and they should be used in a very wiseful and very ethical way, so that equitable share of the profit of that resources can be ensured for all the nations. Okay, so now once this issue was addressed and the people from different countries, they sent their representative there, they heard this thing, they agreed on this thing, okay, and UN, because UN already had lots of responsibilities, okay, so UN then created a separate body from their hands that will take and maintain and will check on all the issues pertaining to environment. This body was said to be as UNEP. UN is United Nations, E is environment, P is program. UNEP, then later another body was formed that is known as the UNDP, that is United Nations Environment Development Programs. Okay, sorry, UNDP, sorry, United Nations Development Program. Okay, so that actually came in a very later phase. First, in 1972, UN prepared an independent body under its umbrella shed, which was known as UNEP. So this is a separate body under the UN, under the governing of UN, that was specifically created to handle or to manage or to address the issues on environment. Clear? So once this UNEP was created, what did it done? This UNEP, I mean, there is some information that this, the headquarter of the UNEP was made in Kenya, Nairobi, that is an African country, very small country, okay, and UNEP came up with the principles. There were some 26 principles, okay, and these principles recognize the impact of the human on the environment. They also on the significance for the first time in history. Okay, so that is why 1972, year 1972 is very, very important. As a Stockholm conference is very, very important. Okay, and then UNEP came up with several roles. It came up with addressing wide range of issues pertaining to atmosphere, marine, terrestrial, and sorry, your terrestrial ecosystems. Okay, it also coordinated that how the development and environmental policies they can go in hand. Okay, and not just this, but UNEP also came up with the funding body which would support the nations or the organizations who will be working in the field of environment. Okay, so UNEP also came up with the support to the governmental agencies, to the regional institutions, to the NGOs, who all will be playing their role in the environment thing. Okay, so UNEP then created 7 divisions that looked and that covered almost all the aspects. So they were like early warning and assessment, environmental policy, technology, industry and economy, regional cooperation, environmental laws, global environmental facility, and communication and public information, which will which will ensure that technology should be transferred between nations. Okay. Now, one of the wonderful initiative by UNEP was this. This was the first of its kind of global campaigning, that was Clean Up the World campaign, and this campaign drew the attention of the people. It drew the participation of the people in large across the globe. So that was the first sort of global campaign that was brought under the umbrella of UNEP. Okay. So this is all about your UNEP and the Stockholm Conference. Okay. So next we move on to is another conference that happened in 1973. Of course, it had nothing to do with the UN. It was organized separately, and this was known as your CITES, CITES. Okay, some people you can remember it as a cities. Of course, the spelling of cities and sites here is different, or maybe you can remember it as a CITES. That happened in 1973, and the full form and it's abbreviated as Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Okay, now this trading thing was not the new thing. It was happening since 18th century. Okay, because hunting, that was the mean of pleasure and entertainment for people. So the animals, they used to be killed, and once this trading thing developed, then this trading of the endangered species, not just of the animals, it also include your minerals, it also includes your plant species, it also includes the information. Okay, that is there with some group, some ethnic group. Even transferring that and trading that is illegal. Okay, so this convention was organized um, in order to come up with some binding rules and regulations and strict regulations, so that this trading thing can be observed, can be monitored closely, and strict and stringent actions can be taken if anyone is doing it unethically, illegally. Okay, so there are several rules and regulations, like for example, those that are endangered, they are not allowed to be traded in any possible circumstance. Whatever the reason is, that if they are endangered, they are not allowed to be traded. Now, what about those species which are not endangered? Will they be also be allowed to trade? So there has to be an agreement to ensure that sustainable methods of trades are there. Okay, that when they are going to take that as a resource, they are maintaining that thing, that ample amount of the backup thing is there. Okay, so now sites is very important, and we will see that this site is a great motivation to the Indian legislation when it came up for creating this Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, because in 1973, India created sites with this Wildlife Protection Act, and since then it has came up with several number of projects for protecting the animal, different animal species, including tiger, lion, and so and so. Okay. So I'll share the document, don't worry. So you will get to know about the sites there in detail. There are three appendixes in the sites in this document and in this conferences that addresses all the actions and the rules and regulations which are compulsory for any nations to follow them. Okay. Okay. So following in succession, and means 1972 is done, 1973 is done. Now in 1975, there was yet another independent convention. Why I'm saying independent? Independent in the sense that they are not under the UN, because most of the conferences I'll show you, we'll see that they are under the umbrella shade of UNEP. Okay, but they had happened independently, means they were not under, their funding support was not from UNEP, okay, or not from UN body. Okay, so 1975, this convention on wetlands happened. This was named as Ramsar Convention. Okay, now Ramsar is a place in Iraq, and because it happened, that convention happened there, so this was named as Ramsar Convention of 1975. So they came up with a broad definition of wetland, and they decide, and in those wetlands they included the lakes, some important rivers, underground aquifers, swamps, marshes, grasslands, oases, deltas, tidal flats, coral reefs, so and so and so. Okay, and even the rice paddies were also included in these wetland convention. Okay, so the funding agency for this Ramsar Convention, as I have already told, was not United Nations. It was UNESCO, that is United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. It serves as a depository for this Ramsar Convention, and its office is in it's headquartered in Switzerland, place named Gland. Okay, so what was the mission? Mission was, of course, to conserve wetlands, to wisely use these wetlands, and to see them as a very important resource in resource in terms of sustainable development. Okay, and we have already discussed when we were discussing about ecosystem how important wetlands are. See, um, and now India became its signatory. Now it happened in 1975, but India signed it in 1981. And the first Ramsar site in India. Can anyone tell what is the first Ramsar site in India, which Ramsar Convention had identified? First wetland. in India that was identified by Ramsar Convention? Anyone? Anyone, beta? Okay, so it's
Chilika Lake.
Chilka. Very good, very good, very good, very good, very good. Chilka Lake, yeah, it's in Odisha. So Chilka Lake was actually identified and was marked as first Ramsar site. Okay. Now the question comes: what is the use of by being identified by the Ramsar committee? Okay. What means? Will that make any difference? So this can be answered by this parallel comparison. I hope you have heard about this World Heritage Site. Okay, and there is always a race of every year that the government of different countries, they are always in the line to bring the name of so and so monument under the list of World Heritage Site. Okay, why? Because when they are recognized by these international bodies, then in that case, the maintaining or the maintenance then the responsibility of the maintenance gets expanded, not just to that local government or the government of that nation, but on the global scale. So in that case, they receive good amount of funding support so that they can be managed and they can be maintained. And it also promotes the tourism, the attraction, the global attraction of the people, so that they visit, and in that way it spreads the awareness, and also it generates a source of income. Okay, so same is the thing that happened for the wetland convention. Now there are a lot. Chilka was the first. And to this time, I think there are several. I think more than 33 wetlands in India have been already been recognized as a Ramsar wetland. Okay, Ramsar wetland. So it implies that their protection, as in now not just the government, Indian government has the responsibility towards its protection, but they are being protected by at the global level, and for that, for maintaining that, the funding agencies will also provide them with the monetary supporting them. Okay, that implies that these are not just the heritage of that nation, but they are of the global importance. Okay, so that's importance of these international conventions. Okay, so there is an entire list. You can, I mean, it's available probably on the official website of Ramsar, and there are several principles that were laid down in this convention. Okay, fine. So after 1975, another important convention that happened was pertaining to ozone. See, उसके बीच में ये climate change, CO2, discovery of the compounds or the compounds that were destroying the ozone, they were happening in succession. Okay? And that was creating that background to come up with this another important convention that happened in 1985, that is known as your convention. So we will discuss about them in our next class. If anyone has any problem or you didn't or कुछ भी अगर नहीं समझ में आया हो, please just ask me.